What's up, Hokie Nation, and welcome into this edition of TSL Today. We record on Monday, May 1st, 2023 from the Virginia Tech Corporate Research Center in Blacksburg, Virginia. And man, we have a great show planned out for you today. Hokies lose 2 of 3 on the baseball diamond to North Carolina over the weekend and take 2 of 3 from number 6 Clemson on the softball diamond here in Blacksburg. All that and much more coming up on this edition of TSL Today, which starts right now. We welcome you back to this edition of TSL Today. This edition of TSL Today, like always, sponsored by Triumph NIL. Triumph NIL, recruit, retain, reward. We appreciate Triumph NIL's partnership with both TSL and TSL Today. All right, guys, well, I think some introductions are in order. Across the way is our Hokie baseball guru, our Virginia Tech baseball beat writer, Chris Hirons. Immediately to my right, Giovanni Heater hopping on today. He called the Friday victory over North Carolina, and I'm your host, Carter Hill. Well, Chris, let's start with you. Tech loses 2 of 3 to North Carolina over the weekend. How would you describe what took place at English Field this weekend?
I don't know. Friday really went really well.
Mm-hmm.
Saturday, not so much. There's my expert analysis. But no, I mean,
this is why we pay him the big bucks, folks. This is why we do that.
Dude, my TSL stimmy goes hard. So Friday, Tech had all the momentum in the world to, take the series on Saturday. You just had to win one. They drop them both. Doubleheaders really haven't treated them well at all, really, this year. I think they're 1-5 in doubleheaders. So, I mean, kind of just didn't go the Hokies' way.
Well, Gio, before I send it to you, first of all, congrats on going viral, calling the game on Friday. Let's pull up the tweet real fast. I do want to read it off a little bit. There is a Twitter account, for those of you who don't know, who follow Major League Baseball, there is a Twitter account called Cespedes Family Barbecue, who made sure to let the world know that Giovanni Heater was calling North Carolina Virginia Tech. He said, elite baseball broadcaster named Holy Crap. Tune into North Carolina Virginia Tech for some Giovanni Heater play-by-play. So congrats on going viral calling that game.
Thanks, man. I can't take any credit for that. My parents gave me the name that I have, so shout out to Matt and Sandy back in the Q's. But I didn't know what Cespedes Family Barbecue was. I'm in the middle of calling the game in like the second inning, and Kyle's texting me and my phone's like blowing up. He's like, you're going to want to check your Twitter. I still didn't know what it was, but then they had like 500,000 followers or something like that, and it was getting a bunch of retweets and comments. So that was pretty cool. But again, credit to the ACC Network for letting me hop on, and to my parents for that one.
Well, Tech wins in dominant fashion with a 7-0 victory on Friday, like you alluded to, and a game that lasted just 2 hours and 15 minutes before falling in both games on Saturday by a final score of 12-8 and 13-7. I want to focus on Friday, though, and Anthony Arguelles in particular. Really good. 7 1/3, 5 hits, 2 walks, 7 strikeouts. He did not allow a run. Easily his best performance of 2023.
No doubt. He was absolutely dialed in on Friday, and he looked at right from the get-go. Started the game with a strikeout. His moving stuff was really impressive to me. Didn't focus in on the fastball pretty much at all until later in his outing. Was actually straying away from it. I talked, Andrew Wells is who I called the game with, fantastic analyst, former Tech pitcher from 2002 to 2008. A lot of knowledge in pitching in particular, obviously. And we were both surprised to see him not use the fastball barely at all, especially wasn't using it on his first pitches. But then when he did, it was blown right past him because they didn't expect it, because he would go at it and he would use it on like a 2-2 pitch. Then he would blow a fastball past him. And at that point throughout the game, most of the time he was using an off speed, using his slider at that point. So to see him work in that fastball, started to catch batters by surprise, and he was just dialed. When he got pulled out, you could tell that he was bummed to get pulled out at first. And to see Chef give him an ovation like that, Chef, he's a great coach, not a guy that's going to necessarily go out there and clap for his own player.
Yeah.
That's not really his MO. So to see him do that said a lot.
Well, Chris, how much of a boost can that be if Anthony Arguelles continues to be that guy? Really good this weekend. And after that rough start against Florida State, went about 6 scoreless in the win in Tallahassee. How much of a boost can he be if he continues to pitch that well?
I mean, we talked about it last week. I mean, he was fantastic again this week. I think he's really kind of become the guy that Tech thought he was going to be. Before the season, Chef said that Arguelles is probably the most excited transfer. He was to watch. Chef was most excited to watch Arguelles as like the transfer. To watch him pitch and watch him work. And I think, he's kind of just blossomed into what Tech really thought he was going to be coming into the season.
Yeah, well, he earned that Sunday starter role for a reason, and luckily it's paying dividends for the Hokies right now. Brady Kurtner in inning and 2/3 scoreless to slam the door. Offensively, quite the day for David Bryant. 2 for 3 with a 2-run homer and 3 RBIs. And then Brody Donay and Christian Martin went yard as well.
Yeah, it was that insurance that they needed towards the end. I mean, I guess it showed that they didn't end up needing it, but it really felt like the nail in the coffin at that point to see those 2 solo shots go over the wall. Donay had a pretty nice game as well. He's been really hot. He was pretty good against Florida State. Went 6 for 12 overall against the Seminoles up in Tallahassee. So to see him kind of carry that over, at least into Friday's game, was a good thing to see with that solo shot.
Well, flipping to Saturday now, for whatever reason, Chris, it just seems like Virginia Tech has struggled in doubleheaders all year long. Are they 1-7 now, I believe, in doubleheaders this year?
2 in Miami, lost both of those. Lost both or split one with Duke, lost both to Boston College, and then lost both yesterday. So I guess that would be 1-7 now.
Yeah,
1-7.
So it just seems like the Hokies just have trouble when they lace them up for doubleheaders.
Yeah, and I asked Chef the other night. I was like, how much has the doubleheaders and the weather kind of impacted you guys? You have every team has to deal with the weather throughout the season, but it seems like the Hokies have kind of got the short end of
short weather.
Yeah.
Well, he's said before he doesn't like he'd prefer not to play a doubleheader.
Yeah.
Oh, nobody does.
I think most coaches would feel that way, but he in particular will do pretty much anything in his power to avoid the doubleheader.
Yeah, you go back to that Virginia series, the Friday game. The rain came down pretty hard for the first 5 innings. Tech really didn't play that well. Hackenberg gave up 7-8 runs, and then they actually won that back half of that ball game, and from like the 5th inning on, but. And I think that's why they kind of played that Friday game instead of doing a doubleheader on Saturday or a doubleheader on Sunday for Virginia, a series that they won. I think really the Sunday the fact that Tech didn't get that Sunday reset after dropping the first Saturday game, really hurt him in the end.
Well, they probably could have played Sunday too. Softball ended up playing on Sunday, just pushing back the start time. They lose game 1, 12-3. They strike first for 3 in the first. They go up 3-0. They give up 12 unanswered runs, and although they eventually got the tie and run of the plate, just never could really come all the way back. And Drew Hackenberg really wasn't himself on the mound.
Yeah, I mean, it hurts. You can't really win a baseball game when you give up a grand slam and a 3-run homer in the next inning. That's tough, but. I thought it was pretty. I thought it showed pretty good that the Hokies, they battled back in the 5th inning, and then how about Peter Saccolaris, man?
Yeah,
I mean, I didn't have 5 1/3 innings from Saccolaris. Not just pitching well, but he shoved. He struck out Mac Horvath twice, who homered 4 times on Saturday. Got him to fly out. He went 0 for 3, but I mean, Saccolaris, he's a guy who really tops out about 80 miles an hour. Kind of throws a funky sidearm, submarine style. Doesn't really throw super hard, but has some good break, and but I really didn't have that on my bingo card going into Saturday.
Guess they just were never able to adjust to the speed. You're hitting at that point 83, 84 from down under. It's a little bit different, a little bit different of a look, and I guess they just were never able to adjust really offensively.
Well, and thank goodness, because at that point it was getting real rough and the pen was getting real thin with a whole other game to play.
Yeah.
I mean, you were at a point where, I'd have to look at the names, and I also don't like to call guys out, but there was a couple of guys that didn't even record a third of an inning, just because the struggles were there once Hack got pulled out. So.
Yeah, I don't know if UNC didn't have, it didn't prepare Saccolaris since he doesn't really pitch on weekends, but, I thought he did really, really well.
Well, especially, too, when you don't have Griffin Green this weekend and you're playing a game literally 45 minutes after game 1 comes to a close. You really need your bullets out of the bullpen, so a nice job from Peter Saccolaris. Carson DeMartini, 2 for 6 with 3 RBIs in game 1. I mentioned it, Tech actually got the tie and run of the plate in the form of Garrick Ebel in the bottom of the 9th, but just could not come through. On to the Saturday night matinee. Before we get into the game itself, I know you were there covering the game. I believe you were watching at the time. I had just arrived at English Field. I do want to talk about the little skirmish, if you will, in the first inning. So just to preface it for those who missed it, so Carson DeMartini in the bottom of the first goes yard, a no doubt bomb to right center field. He crosses home plate, says something, turns to the North Carolina dugout and yells something their way. Tomas Frick, the starting catcher for the Tar Heels, didn't like that at all, took exception, followed DeMartini back to the dugout. John Shefton comes out of the dugout, says something very vigorously to Tomas Frick behind the plate, and Scott Forbes, North Carolina's head coach, comes charging out of their dugout and runs about probably 40 feet across the field to the H and the Hokies logo behind home plate and creates this whole, I don't want to say benches clearing, but this little skirmish here at English Field.
Yeah, Frick looked like when D. Cunha eats the rest of Marshak's pasta, and that's Marshak's reaction.
That's a good analogy.
Kind of like that one.
I would be upset.
I mean, it was kind of a heated moment type of thing. I mean, obviously a bench isn't going to like it when you kind of turn and yell, and yell at him, and which what Carson did. But that's like the way, Carson plays. Personally, I really like baseball players that play that way. I think, it adds some flair to the game, adds some emotion. Maybe Rob Manfred at the MLB level doesn't like it,
Yeah,
but
no.
it's good to see that some emotion. People really, really care about the game, and then Tomas Frick kind of not retaliated, but said something to Carson, and it was kind of on from there. No punches were thrown, no one really got close to each other, but it was bigger than most first innings were.
It continued too throughout the game. Like his next at bat, Carson worked a walk, and then he stuck his tongue out and went literally. That's what he did. Like he was 5 to Frick when he was making the trot. Like he trotted backwards to first and did that, and it was just so he was giving it back. Frick kind of got the last laugh. Correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't he hit a homer?
Yeah, he homered and he singled.
Yeah.
Now, DeMartini homered again, too.
Yeah.
But
He
Tar
homered
Heels-
again?
Yeah,
Okay.
homered twice.
Because I know he had homered before it.
Well, I know your Twitter video has over 200,000 views on Twitter, which is awesome. But I'm almost like, it's one of those things where this was kind of a big deal in the moment, but probably didn't need to be this huge national big deal. But that's how things play out sometimes. We got some fireworks literally after the game, but we got some fireworks at baseball Saturday and then at softball on Saturday too. We'll get to that in the second segment. What went wrong for the Hokies, though, in Game 3? They end up, they take the early lead. The DeMartini solo shot. Chris Canizero goes yard, gives Tech the 2-1 advantage. And, the Tar Heels, they put up a 5 spot the rest of the way, and they continue to add on throughout and just never really went the Hokies' way from there.
I mean, it's really tough to win when you walk 11, 12 guys on any night. And that's exactly what Tech did. I think Tech and UNC combined for a total of 40 walks on Saturday in both games.
Wow.
So, I mean, that's a lot of walks, and neither team's going to... you're not going to win. And that's why UNC gave up 7 runs in the second game and 8 in the first game or whatever it was.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why UNC gave a lot of runs too, but, Tech walked so many people, especially in the second game, that, that's why UNC scored those many runs. And then, you get another 2 homers from Mac Horvath. Tomas Frick goes deep again. It's tough when you walk many people and give up home runs.
Well, Max Horvath, I'm pulling up box score right now. That big 3-run homer, which occurred in the 6th, was when Tech had closed the gap to 5-3, and there was a drop behind home plate that was an E2, and Horvath ends up going yard a couple hitters later. It's 3 unearned runs. It's a 3-run shot, and it gives Carolina an 8-3 lead that they never really, turn back from there. Is Jonah Herney still kind of the guy for that Sunday spot? You're still without Griffin Green. Where do you go from here? I know the Hokies need to go the bullpen game route, but do you continue to go with Jonah Herney in that spot the rest of the way?
I think so. Jonah's been pretty good in the Sunday role. I know he threw the 3 innings against Florida State. Threw, was it 2 innings? Yeah, two and a third against North Carolina. I thought Jonah's been pretty good in that spot on Sundays. Obviously, it's going to be a bullpen game on Sundays, so that's why you have to ride Arguelles for as long as you want, and then Hackenberg, and when you can't get 6-7 innings out of Hackenberg, that's when it really starts to hurt. And if you can't get anywhere between 5 and 7 out of Arguelles, that's when that Sunday game, it's tough. But Tech had just about every available arm. It just didn't go their way.
Well, one thing that still kind of looms over the Hokies the rest of the way is obviously the status of Griffin Green, the status of Jack Hurley. Obviously didn't see Green this weekend. Jack Hurley did not appear in either of the 3 games. Do you have, I ask you this every single week, but do you have any update on any of them, when we could see them again, and potentially if they could come back at some point this year?
Yeah. I mean, the team got Griffin Green's MRI back. They're still gonna go do more additional testing, see if there's anything there. But Chef has said they'll see him back at some point. It's just a matter of when. And then Jack bruised his finger, didn't play this weekend. It's kind of more of a pain tolerance thing, is what I've been told. So they're aiming to get him back by Clemson.
2 weekends.
2
from
weeks.
now.
Yeah.
2
They'll
weekends
have
from
Bowling
now.
Green next weekend, and then Clemson the weekend after.
The next ACC series, which of course is ever so crucial. Last one for you. We close out every single week with this as well. It's very generic, but at this point, we talked about a couple weeks ago the possibility of Virginia Tech still hosting. It was slim. That seems kind of out the window at this point unless crazier things happen. But where do they stand overall? I mean, they're kind of teeter-tottering on that 2-3 line. It seems like they've maybe fallen to the 3. They're currently, I believe, projected to be or slated to be the 9 seed in Durham for the ACC tournament. Where do you see them falling in postseason play at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Going into last weekend, UNC was in the first 5 out on D1's baseball. Tech was the last 5 in. So I think those teams have kind of flip-flopped now. Tech is kind of, the first team on the wrong side of the bubble. So, I mean, again, I think you have to, for Tech, they have to take, pretty much all of their non-conference games the rest of the way and then win the series against Clemson and then take at least one at Wake. And, Peter Saccolaris put it really well. The team has broken down the analytics. We talked to him after the Saturday game, and he said 90% of teams that have a winning record, that are at 500 or have a winning record in the ACC or the SEC have a 90% chance of getting in the postseason. Teams that are at 500, 1 or 2 games below 500, have a 10% chance of making it to the NCAA tournament.
Okay.
So that's kind of the way things stand. I think Tech's their biggest thing is that they have to either get at 500 or go a game over 500, and they're sitting a game below 500 at 11-12 right now.
And I was going to say, just to be transparent, Virginia Tech 25-16 overall, 11-12 in conference play. So just to clarify, you think right now Virginia Tech is on the outside of the NCAA tournament picture. Now, just barely, but you think they're on the outside right now.
I think it could be tossed up depending on who you're asking. I mean, I think D1 Baseball would say they might be on the outside after this weekend, but they did have, kind of a dominating win on Friday. But I think the fact that they got swept on Saturday really hurt them. Yeah. If you ask a few more publications like Baseball America, maybe Baseball America has them in. I think Tech, it really just depends on who you ask, which side of the bubble they're on. If you ask me, they were the last at-large team in D1 Baseball's projection the other day. And so I think they're probably the first team that's on the wrong side of the bubble. So, I mean, obviously, they have a few good weeks, they could lock themselves into the tournament.
Well, just to kind of focus on this, Hokies finish up tomorrow. They get a Charleston. They face off against Marshall, who actually is playing their home games about an hour south this year on 64. It's a 2-game set. They're in Charleston tomorrow, in Blacksburg Wednesday, a 3-game set with Bowling Green this weekend. It's a doubleheader Saturday, though. Then they go to Liberty, 3-game set with Clemson, go to JMU, and then finish up with Wake Forest. So still plenty of opportunities for Virginia Tech. You feel like they're going to be in. I feel like they're going to be okay. But
I think so, too.
But yeah, you obviously got to finish sharp and finish strong.
Well, I think that's the beautiful thing about it when you look at this schedule. The opportunities could not be more plentiful. Obviously, you got to take care of business in the non-conference. Clemson, no slouch. They were kind of a bubble-type team. Well, they just ended up taking 2 out of 3 from Boston College, who was ranked 11th in the country. Huge series win for Clemson over the Eagles. And then Wake Forest, the number 2 team in the country. I don't think you could pick 2 better teams to have an opportunity against down the home stretch of this season as far as really bolstering your resume a little bit. If you can take 2 from Wake, now that's a tall task.
Yeah.
But if you could at least take a game, that'll help things along. And if you can win that series against Clemson, I think you're helping yourself. So you have 2 good teams to close out, which helps, no doubt.
And I think, they got a shot, a legitimate shot to take 2 or 3 from Clemson. I think they got a shot to take 1 from Wake. I think, they should. I don't know if they'll win the rest of their non-conference games. It's a long bus ride to Liberty, long bus ride to JMU. That kind of sucks in the middle of the week. But,
I don't know if I categorize that as long.
I mean, 2 hours still. I mean, it's still 2 hours on a bus.
No, but I understand your point. I mean,
non-conference games, they suck. Like, as a baseball player, like they're tough, especially to get up for. But, I think they got a shot to go undefeated in the non-conference schedule the rest of the way. They got a shot, they got a legitimate shot to take 2-3 from Clemson. Clemson's good, and they're hot. But UVA, you remember they had 2 losses coming into the series here a few weeks ago. Who else? Miami, and the thing is, like, their schedule was kind of played the way into their favor the last few weeks. They went down to Miami, they went down to Tallahassee. They had to go to Duke, where the rain and the weather kind of sucked. But I think the weather, and I think the schedule, at least for Clemson, I think it's really kind of played in their favor next weekend.
Well, you got to think Marshall's not having a good year. You can maybe win both those games. I don't know how Bowling Green is doing, but I don't think they're having a great year. Yeah. So maybe you can sweep that series. You got to hope to sweep it, at least take 2. Hopefully you can go to Lynchburg and get that Liberty game back. They took place in Blacksburg a couple weeks ago. You got to think you're in a good position. I know Clemson's won something like 8 of 9 in conference play. You mentioned it. They're hot.
Yeah, they're hot.
But it's at home. That's why I'm surprised Virginia Tech didn't win that series against North Carolina this past weekend. They're at home. It's an opportunity against the Tigers. You go to JMU. Hopefully you can win that game as well. And then a 3-game set in Winston-Salem. It's going to be, like you said, a tall task to win that series. But if you can get one of those games against, in my opinion, the best team in the country, that would be huge. What's coming up on TSL this week from a baseball standpoint?
Yeah, we'll have the Marshall recap from this week on Wednesday night or Thursday morning, and then we'll have all 3 games covered this weekend.
Cool. Sounds good. Well, Chris, Gio, thanks for hopping on. Appreciate you guys coming on.
Thanks for having us, Carter.
All right. Well, we appreciate you tuning in. Virginia Tech baseball, they dropped the series to North Carolina this weekend. Stay tuned, though. Coming up, we're going to talk the Hokies on the softball diamond. They take a series from number 6 Clemson. All that's coming up on TSL today. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.